welcome to the X22 Report. My name is Dave, and this is episode 213, and today's date is November 12th, 2013. And the title of this episode Is the Economy Really Collapsing? Let's get right into the economic collapse news, and what we are seeing is Fitch decided to downgrade Chicago right now, and they're saying that their liabilities are 678% of its revenue. They're also saying that $8 billion in Chicago's unlimited tax general obligation bonds to A from AA minus. Fitch also cut $497 million sales tax bonds to A minus from AA minus and downgraded $200 million commercial paper notes. And the reason for this is because of the poor American economic landscape, high unemployment, and property tax base recovery has been elusive, and we are seeing this happen in every single city. We saw it happen in Detroit, and Detroit finally went bankrupt. We are seeing this in many different cities. In a couple of reports that I did before, I listed down all the cities that do not have any type of cash reserve, and I also reported on many of the cities are spending a lot more than they're bringing in, and of course that sounds like the U.S. government, where they're not bringing in that much revenue to support the debt that they're putting on, and we're seeing this happen in many of the cities, and we can understand why these cities are taking on draconian laws, like New York, for instance, taking on laws to stop and frisk people, and they're also creating gun laws to make it very difficult for people to get weapons. And we are seeing this happen along the East Coast. We're seeing it in New Jersey, New York, Connecticut, Maryland, all the populated areas, California, Colorado, Illinois. We're seeing this all over these areas because these are the very heavy populated areas. And even in Jersey, we see them. They created a draconian gun law where it will check you first on the TSA list to see if you're some type of terrorist, and if you're on that list, you can't get a gun permit. And the funny thing is, you don't know how you got on the list, you don't know how to get off the list, and you're not allowed to see the list. So it makes no sense whatsoever at this time. Now, I talked a lot about real estate and how real estate is in a bubble. And we all understand this. We understand that the Fed is still pumping in billions of dollars to buy this real estate from the banks. The banks are taking that money, pumping up the stock market, and this is what's happening right now. In my past reports, I also described many different indicators. Back in August, September, we saw that mortgage applications were declining. And we saw that most of the sales were in cash from huge investment companies, hedge funds, and things like that. And what we are seeing now is that sales are starting to decline. We're seeing that pending sales are declining, and we're actually seeing now new home builders are reporting that people are canceling their homes at this time. And what we are seeing is that D.R. Horton has reported that the cancellation rate has skyrocketed to about 31%, which they only expected about a 25% cancellation rate, but it has gone up dramatically at this time. And, what we are seeing is, if we look back in time, that mortgage applications took a dive, and we always know that the sales lag. And what we are seeing is the sales now that are coming in, people are starting to cancel, people are not taking mortgages out, the pending sales are dropping, and we are moving into a very slow time for housing, and we can see that the bubble is now pretty much coming apart, and the major investors are looking to get out of the housing market. Now, does this happen every single place the same way at the same time? No, it doesn't. We see this differently in each state, even down to the city and even down into the counties. It depends where you are, where you live, but eventually it all catches up with everyone. And I can remember back, and I've repeated this story before, when I was living in New York, trying to sell my home traffic completely came to a screeching halt. I mean, just 2 or 3 months before, the person next to me who was selling his home had a busload of people, sold it in a week. I waited 3, 4 months, not a single person coming to my house. Then I called down to Florida where my sister-in-law works. She's a realtor, and she told us that things are booming. I have no idea what you're talking about. Things are, rocking like crazy down here. And it took about 6 to 8 months for this to appear in Florida, and they were hit even harder than in New York. So we will see this happen in different places at different times, and we understand this. And we also understand that it's very difficult for people to purchase homes that are not working, underemployed, have bad credit because their homes were foreclosed on, who have sold their homes using a short sale, and they have no credit at this time. And all these people, the amount of people that went through this is quite large. Because how do we know this? Because the banks still have a lot of shadow inventory on their books. The Fed is still pumping in billions and billions of dollars every month, and they want to increase this. A former top Fed trader confesses that QE does nothing, absolutely nothing, for the economy. It does nothing for jobs. It does nothing for the housing market. I mean, in the way that we want it to happen. It does absolutely nothing. What does QE do? Well, it makes the bankers and Wall Street richer. It pumps up the stock market. It creates the treasury bond bubble. It creates the housing bubble. It creates the student loan bubble. This is what QE is all about. QE is here to rob, pillage, take whatever they can from the everyday person. That's all this is used for. And we are seeing the great rotation of retail investors in the stock market right now, where the big guys, the insiders, the big investment houses understand that the stock market is in a bubble. They are leaving the market, and they are selling their stocks to all the people who came afterwards, who think the market's going to go much, much higher, who eventually will lose everything they have. And this always happens the same exact way. The stock market, right before the crash, hits all-time new highs. The big guys, the insiders, get out, and the little guys are left holding it all, watching it completely come tumbling down. And we know this is happening at this time, so we see many things happening all at the same time. We see housing market. The big investors are trying to unload their homes, trying to get the everyday person to purchase these homes, and they're having a tough time purchasing because guess what? If youth unemployment is according to the government, is 22%, but if you use the non-manipulated numbers, it's closer to 50%. And we also had a report that most of the students who are graduating college are still living with their parents because they can't find good jobs. We also understand that the government is modifying the student loans because they understand a lot of these students are underwater. They cannot find jobs in their fields, and they're making a lot less, so they're modifying the payments, so it makes it easier for them. And a lot of people, a lot of these students have no payments at this time because they understand if they just let all these student loans go, the whole thing will just come crashing down. So they're modifying everyone and pretending everything is okay. And from all of that, there's no way that the up-and-coming youths are going to be able to support the housing market, the job market, the retail market. It just can't be done. So we see that things are not going the way everyone thinks they're going. This is not a recovery. We are right smack dam in the middle of a collapse. This is the beginning stages of it. Europe, if we look out to Europe, we're seeing the collapse actually happening out there, and they're a little bit ahead of us here in the States because we have the illusion, we have the money printing, but again, all of that will soon arrive here, and we're seeing the beginning stages. We're seeing Greece needing another bailout, and they're implementing more austerity. We saw Cyprus with bail-ins and bailouts. We see Portugal, we see France, we see Italy, all having major problems. Very high unemployment, a lot of debt. Things are not getting better. Now, a couple reports ago, I reported on Citibank and other banks pushing this bill forward, where they can move their derivative accounts into guaranteed accounts that will be guaranteed by the FDIC. And we all know why they want that to happen. It's because they understand when this thing comes crumbling down, all that's just going to vaporize, and it's going to be a domino effect where derivatives are just going to completely collapse. And right now, the International Swaps and Derivative Association want to suspend the derivatives at this time. And this goes on to say the United States, UK, Germany, and Switzerland have asked the ISDA to include a short-term suspension of early termination rights in its master agreement when it comes to bank resolutions. The regulators say the suspension, preferably no more than 48 hours, gives resolution officials time to switch derivatives contracts to a third party or bridging entity when necessary. I wonder why they want to do this. And what this will do, it will allow them to move these assets to vehicles protected temporarily from the effects of this entire collapse. And they're doing this because why? They understand this entire system cannot be maintained. And right now, all of these financial institutions are taking precautions because they understand that this whole entire thing is going to come crumbling down. Now, again, Citibank and the other banks who wrote this bill to move them into guaranteed accounts, it hasn't gone through the Senate, and it's not passed yet. And now they're asking the ISDA for them to suspend and move these into different third-party bridging entities where they can protect their investments because they understand that there is a collapse coming. There's no other reason why you do this. So if we look back in time, what are we seeing? Well, we're seeing the Fed continually push down gold. We see gold below 1,300 right now. And what they're going to do is they're going to continually suppress gold into the very end. And the way you know we're coming to the very, very end, you will know because they will suppress gold so much that people are going to wonder if they should still hold on to it. This is nothing yet, and eventually what's going to happen as they suppress it and the economy starts collapsing down, people will finally wake up, and all of a sudden you will see gold skyrocket right after that, and that's how you know when things are really hitting the fan. Okay, now we understand that Obamacare is a complete nightmare. It is definitely not for the people. We know the enrollment numbers are absolutely terrible. They're horrific, and the website doesn't work, and we really don't want it to work, actually. We want them to repeal Obamacare. At least that's what I want them to do. If they're going to do something for the people, give us something that's good. Don't increase people's premiums. Don't have companies only give health insurance for the husband and not for the person that's working and not for the spouse. Don't give us penalties if we decide not to take it because it feels like we're being forced into it. So since the numbers are so bad, the Obama administration wants to redefine the word enrollee. Okay, now enrollee means that you actually paid and you were enrolled in something. It's almost like going to Amazon. You put something in your cart and you go ahead and you pay for it. If it's in your cart and you don't pay for it, well, you didn't buy it. Well, Obama wants to change that with his website. What he wants to do is anyone that has an insurance plan in the cart, he wants to consider them enrolled. That's what they're doing right now. They don't they're not going to count the people that paid. They're just going to look in their because what you can do on a website, you can go and see how many items are in the cart for everyone using the back end of the website. It's a very simple thing. They do a query on the database and they get that information. So what they're going to do is they're going to query the database. How many people have their, listen, I do it. I go to Amazon. I'll put 3, 4, 5 things in the cart and I'll buy one. And you'll see people put that plan in there, this plan in there, that plan in there. They'll query the database and they'll say, "Oh my God, our enrollee is up to 2.7 million." And what really happened was people have 3 or 4 plans in the cart, and they didn't even pay for it, so they really are not enrolled in it. They didn't get cards from the insurance companies, and this is what they're doing. Guess what? To manipulate the numbers. The government, the Fed, the central bankers are masters at manipulating statistics. This is what they're really good at, to convince and to create the illusion that things are a lot better than they are. And we see this all over the place. Now, Obamacare is a huge, huge, huge document. I think, what is it, like 13,000 pages or something like that. And what they want to do, Obama has already created the executive orders, the 23 executive orders for gun control. And what he wants to do right now is Obama's program is to prevent gun control violence. And he believes that the mental health treatment will reduce gun violence. In issuing the new health insurance regulations, the administration said it will have acted on all 23 executive actions that Obama announced earlier this year to reduce gun crime following the shooting in Newtown, Connecticut. Despite Obama's belief that if Americans are taxed enough to pay for mental health and substance abuse services for all, there will be less gun violence. But mental health experts have stated that such a law would not have prevented the Newtown shooting or other similar shootings. The Mayo Clinic noted that the vast majority of people who perform mass shootings are not mentally ill, that the majority of mentally ill people are not dangerous, and that taking guns away from the mentally ill will not eliminate mass shootings. Why do we think this law is actually in here? This law is in here to disarm the American people. The end. That is it. Because they're still working out the kinks and the details of how they're going to get the information on who has a gun, who has a mental problem, or who is on medication because they're depressed, or who knows what else. And they're working on merging this information together to understand who is on certain medications, who's seeing a psychologist or a psychiatrist, and who is having problems. Do they own a gun? And this is all put in place for one reason and one reason only. Instead of looking into the drugs that actually cause the problems with all of these shooters, they're looking at taking away the weapons from everyday healthy people, veterans that come back from war who they believe are not stable, and their weapons should be taken away, but they were in the war and they were able to have hand grenades. They're able to control expensive equipment, weapons, and when they come back to the States, they're not allowed to handle a handgun. It makes absolutely no sense whatsoever, and they are going to use this to do home inspections. They're going to use this to inspect to see if your guns are safely locked away, and to make sure that everyone is safe in the home, and inspect the home. And this, again, is the violation of the Fourth Amendment. They have no right to do this. And it does sound great in the beginning when they say, oh, we want to make sure everyone is safe. And guess what? It always starts out in this way, and people think that it's for a good purpose, but it's not for a good purpose. It is for the government, the central bankers, to get into people's homes, to get rid of the Constitution, and to disarm the people. That is why this is put into place. The end. That's it. And we understand that Obama is purging the military, cutting its funds, diverting the funds from the military, giving them to DHS, to TSA, to FEMA. And right now, Chuck Hagel warned Tuesday that troops and their families will be asked to sacrifice on pay and benefits to preserve readiness in an era of tighter budgets where the soldiers now will have to do and make with less money because their budgets are being cut. And we know why they are doing this, because they are trying to reduce the amount of military, divert that money to DHS to make local and civilian armed forces more powerful, and to get rid of the military force. And this is their plan. They are in phase 2 of it right now, and this is what they are planning to do. We know that the central bankers, the U.S. government, use propaganda for certain reasons. They use propaganda with North Korea. North Korea right now, they continually are pushing the propaganda that they're building a nuclear weapon. They have ballistic missiles that will reach the United States, that they're going to set off an EMP weapon over the U.S. And if this ever does occur, we know it is a false flag, because what North Korea is doing right now, they are making deals with Russia, and the next step of what they, and the first time they were using the propaganda, it was when North Korea was making a deal with Iran to purchase their oil bypassing the U.S. dollar. And right now in North Korea does use the U.S. dollar for transaction, and also uses the yuan. And what's happening right now is North Korea is dumping the U.S. dollar and using the yuan because it bypasses the sanctions that the U.S. has on North Korea right now, and they are not penalized when they use the yuan. And this is why they are building up the propaganda with North Korea, because they are making deals. They are trading without using the U.S. dollar, and the central bankers believe that any country that does not use the U.S. dollar is an enemy to them. Now, we understand that Egypt was cut off from the United States. Their aid, the military supply, were cut off because of the coup that happened in Egypt when they kicked out Morsi. And now General al-Sisi is in command right now, and we have Putin, who is making deals with Egypt right now, and Moscow has agreed to equip Egypt with a sophisticated combined double-layered system which covers both its defensive and offensive requirements. The first layer will provide a shield against attack by stealth aircraft, drones, cruise missiles for all of Egypt's airspace, including the Suez Canal, the Red Sea, and in coastal waters in the central Mediterranean. The second layer will be built around a sophisticated surface missiles with ranges that cover all points in the Middle East, including Iran, Moscow, Cairo, and they are keeping these types of missiles a secret. And planning is already underway for the deployment of some 1,500 Russian military personnel in Egypt to have the new missiles up and running, and local personnel trained in their use by mid-2014. Now, right now, John Kerry, who visited Cairo on November 3rd, he tried to get General el-Sisi to call off the arms deal with Russia by offering to restore the full $1.3 billion U.S. military aid package, which Obama, kind of stopped at this point. And right now they are going with Russia, and they're saying they have a better deal with them. And we can see what is happening right now. The U.S. is actually losing control of Egypt at this point, and we might even see that the U.S. dollar is no longer used as a reserve currency there. Aid is going to completely stop. Russia will be taking over. Russia will be moving into the ports, and we can see how this is happening. We also see this happening in many of the other Middle East countries, and it's getting more and more difficult for the central bankers and the United States to keep control of the Middle East at this time. And this is a direct threat on the U.S. dollar, because if these these countries stop using the US dollar as the reserve currency, we will see what is called a dollar collapse, because all this money, the treasury bonds, will start to flow back to the United States. The central bankers of the United States understand this, and they understand that if this happens, they are going to need to increase quantitative easing. They will need to increase quantitative easing because of the real estate bubble, because there are going to be a lot more foreclosures on the bank's books, so they'll need to pump the QE up for that. They will also need to pump up the QE for the treasury bond sell-off that's happening around the foreign nations, so they will need to purchase a lot more treasury bonds. And as the U.S. dollars flow back to the United States, we will first see deflation. We'll see inflation as the U.S. dollar heads back here right now. I know the Fed is trying to keep control of inflation. The places where I see inflation are in food and energy. Every time I go to the store, I see food prices go up, and they fluctuate. Sometimes they go up, and then sometimes they go down a little bit, then back up, and they're trying to maintain control. But when these dollars do come back to the U.S., we are going to see some major, major inflation at that time. Now, in my past reports, I reported on Turkey was making a deal with China to purchase their missiles. And guess what? NATO, the U.S., they do not like this at all. So what has been happening at this point, NATO and the United States have been putting a lot of pressure on Turkey to abandon its decision to buy Chinese-made missiles. And they've been pressuring them, and Turkey at this time might not purchase the Chinese missiles because of all the pressure. Okay, now there has been a report, and it came out from the Center for Strategic and Budgetary Assessment, and this is the pivot to Asia and how Australia is central to the American war plans against China. And the Center for Strategic Budgetary Assessment, the CSBA, provides a detailed assessment of Australia's strategic role in the Pentagon's preparations for war with China. And the title of the report is Gateway to the Indo-Pacific Australian Defense Strategy and the Future of Australian-U.S. Alliance. And this highlights the critical geographical importance of Australia for the U.S. naval and air operations in the Indian and Pacific Oceans in any war against China. The U.S. military buildup in the Indo-Pacific region is an integral component of the Obama administration's pivot to Asia. An all-sided diplomatic, economic, and strategic offensive aimed at undermining Chinese influence throughout the region and encircling China militarily. And we are seeing this right now. The United States, with other NATO allies, have been encircling China in preparation for what? The war with China. And the CBSA report explicitly identifies China as the chief potential enemy. Australia's strategic geography, well-trained armed forces, and highly regarded intelligence complex renders it an increasingly invaluable partner to the United States. And we can see how this is going to play out. They are getting prepared. We understand, and I've been mentioning this for a very long time, that all of these countries right now are preparing for World War III. They understand that these central bankers, the U.S. dollar, the U.S. economy is on its last legs. They are losing control of the Middle East. The central bankers thought they had the war started with Syria. They thought they had the green light, it was a go, and they were ready to go. But guess what? The whole thing fell apart. But guess what? They haven't stopped with their plan. They will not give up at all. And this report goes on to say that in an event that a war with China extends into the Indian Ocean. The CBSA suggests that the Australian military could make a useful contribution by leading or participating in operations against isolated Chinese naval task forces in the eastern and southern parts of the Indian Ocean. So you people who listen to me in Australia, get ready because the war is coming there. It will be in the Pacific, it will be in the Middle East, and it will be in America and Europe this time. It will be everywhere. Now, in Iran, we understand that they are going through the peace talks. They are trying to iron out the details of the plan for peace, even though we know there's not going to be any peace. This is an illusion. And right now, Tehran has pointed the finger at the West, denying the accusations that Iran was to blame for the inconclusive Geneva nuclear talks. They were having problems. They didn't come to an agreement. And the P5+1 unified on Saturday when we presented our proposal to the Iranians, but Iran couldn't take it, Kerry said. And then Iran came back and dismissed Kerry's allegations on Tuesday, saying he was spinning the public. Mr. Secretary, was it Iran that gutted over half of the U.S. draft Thursday night and publicly commented against it Friday morning? Iran pretty much said on a Twitter feed. And we can see what is happening right now. This has nothing to do with nuclear weapons. This has nothing to do with sanctions. This has nothing to do with anything that is being discussed. What is the problem? The big problem is that the United States, the central bankers, Israel, Saudi Arabia, need to get into Syria and Iran to prop up the U.S. dollar for a little bit longer. And the problem is the main event in Syria was called off. They tried to use the false flag of a chemical attack. It didn't work. The American people called their bluff. They had to cave. They had to create this peace talk with Assad. So now they are working on a new plan. And this plan goes something like this. We are the United States. We are looking to have peace talks with Iran. We just want peace. That's all we want. Peace, 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 peace. In the background, they are planning another false flag because they understand if they have peace with Iran, what does that give them? They've been trying for over 30 years to get into Iran ever since they kicked the central bankers out of there and stopped using the U.S. dollar as the reserve currency. And now we're at the end game. Now the U.S. dollar can't make it anymore. It's like the little train that could, and it can't get over that hill, and it's falling back down. And the only way to make this work and to extend the life of the U.S. dollar is to get into Iran and Syria. And they know this. They know this, and they want it. And this is why they're putting up this illusion that they want peace, because what they're going to do is they're going to use this illusion to make it seem like Iran are the ones who are starting the war this time by creating a false flag event on American soil. Or they might use Syria. It all depends. Now, Syria has asked the West for some transport equipment to move their chemical weapons, and the West said, absolutely not. We are not giving you anything because you're going to use this for the war with the rebels, so we're not giving you anything. So, and the West went on to say that that Assad has the ability to move these chemical weapons, and they don't want to get involved with this because, of course, if something, just so happens that they were transporting and the chemical weapons disappeared somehow, some way, the West will not be blamed for this. They can blame it on Syria, and this could make the agreement null and void, and the whole strike scenario could be ramped up again. And they understand that the next interim deadline is November 15th, which is coming up very soon. So we'll have to see how this plays out at this time. Now, there was a warning from the White House now to Congress that they say, listen, stop with the sanctions right now. We're trying to talk to Iran about peace. And if we put sanctions on the table right now, the president will only have pretty much one decision right now, that we will need to go to war with Iran at this time. And Carney came out and said that, he warned that if Obama efforts to solve the Iranian nuclear crisis diplomatically failed or were blocked, he would be left with few options, among them a military strike. So we can see really where this is going. So let me see. In the one breath, they want peace. They want to talk to them diplomatically. But if it doesn't work out, we're going to strike. I mean, it's like black and white with them. It's because we know what they really want. We know they really want to strike. That's all they want. And what they also went on to say that the American people, and they learned this from the last time, the American people do not want a war with Iran, because they realize this with Syria, that Congress and the American people do not want war at this time, and they can't push this war forward. So they are putting this into the minds of everyone that if this diplomatic talks do not go well and they can't iron out a deal, and even if they do iron out a deal, they're going to show that Iran has not lived up to their end of the deal, and you will see a false flag happen here on U.S. soil. Now, Obama, during the peace talks right now, and to show good faith, what he went out to do is he extended the state of emergency against Iran. So let's back up here for a second. Obama is out there. The White House is out there. Kerry is in Iran trying to diplomatically work out a peace talk. And to show good faith that the United States wants peace, we went ahead and extended the state of emergency against Iran for another year. Not for 2 months, not for 3 months, for an entire year. What does that tell you? Now, Germany is warning that U.S. facilities could be targeted in the wake of NSA leaks. Officials in Germany have cautioned authorities to prepare for possible attacks against United States facilities overseas. The government office said that a potential threat had emerged following the information disclosed by NSA leaks, adding that the security measures aimed at protecting U.S. facilities in Germany should be increased. Anti-American sentiment has spread across the globe in recent weeks. So what we are seeing right now, there is a backlash of what Washington has been doing, the NSA has been doing, where it was spying on all these European leaders, and now the people in these countries are becoming are not looking favorably at America, and they're looking to possibly do something to some of the U.S. facilities in these countries. And this is very serious, and we'll have to keep an eye on what is going on there. Not only do we have threats from Al-Qaeda and Al-Shabaab, now we have threats from the people actually in Germany and in Europe because of what Washington has been doing. Listen, everyone, thanks a lot for listening. Be well, be safe, and especially be prepared. Thanks a lot.